Okay, guys. Okay, guys. Hello.
Sir.
Yes, ready? Okay.
Sir.
So here the two type of exceptions are there. So that is a user can create an exception and Java can perform the exception. User can perform the exception and Java can perform the exception. So here that user it can be identified by the seeing of the programming. So this is the error line and this is the error event. Then you have to exception. Yeah, that then you have to create the exception by the identification, that user identification. But here you don't know that how to identify that program. So that exception, you don't know that identification of that exception. Then you have to compile that entire the program. Then the Java defaultly identified that exception. Clear?
Sir.
In those ways, that exception handling it can be performed in our program. Clear?
Sir.
Okay, right. So that is the one thing, and two type of the different type of exceptions is available in your program. In that way, this is the user perform exceptions and Java can perform the exceptions. These are all the way of exception handling. And here, different type of exceptions is involved in your program. So, first one is the checked exception. Second one is the unchecked exception. I have to use this paint. One moment. First one is the
Try block.
checked exception. And second one is the unchecked exception.
What are these, sir? Sir, ఇది checked unchecked.
Two type of exceptions are involved in our Java program. First one is the checked exception and second one is the unchecked exception. So here, how can you call that checked exception? In the sense, in compile time, that exception it can be identified. That is the checked exception. Compile time.
So screen control, sir.
Okay, one moment. Clear?
Your screen is not clear, sir. Now it's okay, sir.
Yeah. Right. So two type of exceptions is involved in our Java programming. First one is the checked exception. This checked exception is whenever it is that program, whenever you're compiling that programming, in the compiling time only it can be identified that checked exception. Clear?
Yes, sir.
So and second one, unchecked exception. This unchecked exception, it is like the unchecked exception is the whenever you're compiling that programming, the runtime only it can be identified that exception. Exception in the sense that is the error in between. Whenever you're compiling that programming in between, it can be identified that error. Then that program it can be going to exception. Clear? That is the exception. Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sir.
Whenever you
Sir,
compiling
ఇంకోసారి చెప్పండి సార్ ఇది.
whenever you compiling that programming, in between that event, it can be by the using of any error, it can be identified. So which time?
Compiling time,
Checked
sir.
exception is
Yeah,
compile
compiling time. Okay, that compiling time, it can be identified that exception, that is a checked exception. Whenever you execute that programming, whenever it is identified the runtime,
Okay, sir.
whenever it is identified that exception, that is the unchecked exception.
Unchecked. Okay, sir.
Exception. Clear?
Yes,
So,
sir.
all right. So here, and two type of, one moment.
చెక్డ్ వచ్చి కంపైల్ చేసేటప్పుడు చూపిస్తుంది ఎర్రర్,
Yes.
అన్చెక్డ్ వచ్చి రన్ టైమ్ లో చూపిస్తుంది సార్, అంతే కదా సార్?
అంతే అంతే. సరే, ఇక్కడ నేను మెన్షన్ చేస్తాను ఉండు. రికార్డ్
sir.
అవుతుందా? ఓకే. ఇక్కడ నేను మెన్షన్ చేస్తాను, చూడండి. Clear?
Sir.
Right. So that is the way actually. And here two type of what is that, conditions is available. How to create that exception? So how to create that exception in the sense, in two ways is here. The one is for example, if condition and else if else. How can you write in your programming in that way? You have to use. So here, this is the if condition. Just you have to create and start the block, and then you have to end the condition.
Close.
In this way only you have to use an exception in our programming. Clear?
Sir.
Yes. And what is that? While condition. For example, while condition is there. So then you have to start the block and end the block. And here you have to mention what is that exception, which line it can be getting the error. That line you have to mention it within the block only. You have to create that exception. Then that entire programming, whenever it is compiling the programming, whenever it is running the programming, that compiler or that runtime, it can be exception in this only line. Then entire the program, it can be executed. అంటే ఈ లైన్ మాత్రమే ఎర్రర్ ఉన్నది అని ఏదైతే అని అనుకుంటున్నావో, ఆ ఎర్రర్ ఉన్నటువంటి దాన్ని మాత్రమే ఎక్సెప్షన్ చేసి, ఎక్సెప్షన్ అంటే ఏంటి, దాన్ని ఎక్సెప్ట్ అంటే ఇప్పుడు ఒక 10 మెంబర్స్ ఉన్నారనుకోండి, ఎక్సెప్ట్ శివాని, ఎక్సెప్ట్ శాంతి, ఎక్సెప్ట్ శివ, ఇలా మనం ఆ పర్సన్స్ తప్ప అని చెప్పడానికి మనం ఏం చేస్తాం, ఎక్సెప్షన్ అని అంటాం. ఇన్ ద సేమ్ వే, and in lot of lines you have to using in one programming. So in that one programming, you accept how many lines you have to give an exception. So how can you why you are providing that exception? In the sense that line is the error. So based on this line only, that entire program, it cannot be executed. In that way, that line just you have to identify that, just you have to create that exception for that line only. Whenever you mentioning that exception for that line, then the entire the programming except that line, it can be executed. Clear?
Sir.
Any doubt? Other person, guys, other guys? Tahir, did you understand my point? Tahir?
Yes, sir.
Yes, clear?
Yes, sir, clear.
Right, very good. So that is the exception. In that way, you have to create that exception. Why? Because actually presently in present you have to using a number of programs you have to use in our project. Number of classes also you have to using in our project actually. On the time, some of the class or some of the methods it getting some problem. So entire the project or entire that class or entire that package, it should not give any answer or any output on the time. So which one is the error, and just you have to identify. So that line or that method, just you have to provide that exception, then you have to compile that entire the program, then you have to get the output only. Clear? And the lot of methods, lot of things it can be involved entire the one application. Yes or no? Not only one method, you cannot use entire that application. In the number of methods, you have to use entire that application. In that way, some of the methods is getting the error. For that error, that entire the application, it could not be given any output. On the time, just to have to given that exception for that error lines only or error methods only. Then you have to use it is that entire the application it can be utilizing. For example, chudandi, just you have to take that Facebook application or WhatsApp application or any company application, food సంబంధించినటువంటి application, and so many applications is available on that internet. So on the time, some method, what is that? Some button it is not properly working, or some information it is not properly available in our application. So in that error purpose, or in that what is that functionality purpose, entire the application you should not given any output. So on the time, entire the application you have to stop. That is a right way. Yes or no?
sir.
That is the right way.
No, sir.
No. So on the time, just to have to exception, just to have to provide that exception for that error line only, or error that functionality or method, and what is getting that error, that methods or from that methods or from that variables, from that or values, then you have to identify, just you have to provide on that particular error thing, then go to compile that program, go to execute that programming. Then you have to get the except that functionality, you have to use the entire that application. Clear?
Sir.
Yes, very good. మిగతా వాళ్ళు
Yes, sir.
ఏదైనా డౌట్ ఉందంటే చెప్పండి. శివాని,
Throw and throw, sir. Throw and throw.
ఏంటది రోనా?
అలా సార్, ఫస్ట్ అది టైప్స్ చేసాం కదా సార్, 3 టైప్స్, ట్రై బ్లాక్, త్రో అండ్ త్రోస్ కీవర్డ్. అది అడుగుతున్నారు సార్.
ఓకే ఓకే, చెప్తాను. ఎందుకు ఫస్ట్ టైం పుట్టిన వెంటనే లెగ్ పీస్ కావాలంటారు ఎందుకు? ముందు నేను చెప్పిందని అర్థం చేసుకోండిరా.
సార్
ఏ వెంకట చెప్తాను, మెథడ్స్, కీవర్డ్స్ అన్నిటిని యూజ్ చేసి ఎలా హ్యాండిల్ చేస్తావు అంతా చెప్తున్నాం. కాకపోతే నువ్వు రియల్ టైంలో హౌ టు ఫేస్ దిస్ ఎక్సెప్షన్ హ్యాండ్లింగ్, when you know that basics, then you have to how to utilize that method and how to utilize that keyword, by the using of that keyword, how to handle that program. So just before that, write on that programming, you have to know that real time where you have to use that thing in your real time. So that is the very most important. Clear, Venkataramanaya? Clear?
Clear.
సో నువ్వు పుట్టిన వెంటనే ఇప్పుడు లెగ్ పీస్ కావాలి అని అంటున్నావు. సో దాన్ని యూజ్ చేస్తావు, ఎక్కడ యూజ్ చేస్తావు, ఎలా యూజ్ చేస్తావు, ఏ టైంలో యూజ్ చేస్తావు. సో అలాంటివన్నీ కూడా ఎవరు ఏడుస్తున్నారు పాపం. హూ ఇస్ దిస్? జాయా? నవ్వడమా? చేతన్?
నవ్వడం సార్.
అవునా? ఓకే ఓకే, రైట్. దట్ ఈస్ ద థింగ్. ఓకే, క్లియర్. So here, and one more thing, so one more exceptions also is involved in our programming. One moment, I have to given a you should be go that Eclipse. Just remove this one, and here just you have to copy. In method wise, just you have to use in this programming how to get the that error, then how to handle that programming, and these are all things just you have to create this. And previous మనం ఏదైతే కట్ చేసామో ఆ కట్ చేసినటువంటి ప్రోగ్రామ్ ని ఇక్కడ మనం ఫంక్షనాలిటీ కింద మనం రాద్దాం. అక్కడ కట్ చేసినటువంటి దాన్ని అండ్ ఇది కూడా రాద్దాం. ఇక్కడ సిస్ అవుట్ అనేటువంటి స్టేట్మెంట్స్ రెండింటిని కూడా మెన్షన్ చేద్దాం. సో ఇక్కడ మెన్షన్ చేసిన తర్వాత ఇక్కడ మనకి ఎర్రర్స్ అనేటువంటివి ఏమేమి వస్తున్నాయి అనేటువంటిది మనం చూసినట్లయితే ఒకసారి చూడండి. ఇక్కడ మెథడ్స్ అనేటువంటివి 2 టైప్ ఆఫ్ మెథడ్స్ అనేటువంటి వాటిని మనం ఇక్కడ యూజ్ చేసాము. వేరియబుల్స్ అనేటువంటి వాటిని ఇక్కడ మనం మెన్షన్ చేసాం. ఈ వేరియబుల్స్ అనేటువంటి వాటిని మెథడ్స్ ద్వారా మనం కాల్ చేస్తున్నాం. క్లియర్? నా మాట అర్థమవుతుందా? వినిపిస్తుందా గాయస్?
వినపడుతుంది సార్.
మనం
ఓకే
సార్ మెథడ్ 1 2 టైమ్స్ రాసాం సార్.
ఓకే రాయని, కానీ పారామీటరైజ్డ్ ఉన్నాయి కదా
సార్.
నీకు అన్ని తెలుసుండి ఎందుకు అడుగుతున్నావు చేతన్? నేను చెప్పేది వినండి. ఓకే, సో నేను ఇక్కడ ఎందుకు ప్రోగ్రామ్ ఇక్కడ నేను ఇలా తయారు చేశాను అనేటువంటిది ఎందుకనంటే యూ డోంట్ ఐడెంటిఫైడ్ దట్ రాంగ్ థింగ్. సో వై ఐఎమ్ గివింగ్ దట్ రాంగ్ థింగ్, ఐ హ్యావ్ టు గివ్ ఇన్ ద ఎక్స్ప్లెనేషన్ ఆఫ్ దట్. కావాలనే నేను అలా రావడానికి చూసాను. ఎందుకనంటే సో బై దట్ ఎర్రర్, హౌ టు హ్యాండిల్ దట్ ఎర్రర్ and how to exception that error, and those are all things we will discuss. On that way I have to give in.
సార్ మెథడ్స్ రాయడం వల్ల యూజ్ ఏంటి సార్? అసలు
మెథడ్స్ రాయడం వల్ల యూజ్ ఏంటి అని అంటే you don't know about that method in previous bank programming and
I know sir, but in this program what is the purpose of the returning method?
Yes, of course. Wait, yeah. Why I am using that methods in your programming? వెయిట్ ఎందుకు నువ్వు అసలు నీకు వెంకటయ్యకి ఈ రోజుకి ఎందుకని చికెన్ పీసులు అంతగా బాగా కావాలని అనుకుంటున్నారు? లెగ్ పీసులు
ఈ రోజు తినం సార్, ఈ రోజు
థర్స్డే. ఓహో, థర్స్డే కాబట్టి తినరా? అయినా సరే ఎందుకు కావాలని అనుకుంటున్నారు మరి?
తింటాం సార్.
కానీ నువ్వు అడగట్లేదే.
తిన్నా సార్ మార్నింగ్. ఎందుకు?
ఏంటది? Yes, okay. Here you have to write in this program in different way actually. So in that different way, in the sense, in previous program you have to directly calling from that variables values and calling from output and starting programming and ending programming that variables, and these are all things. But here in this programming you have to using different type of methods. Here you have to using that method. From this using this method, how it can be getting the programming. So how it can be follow this programming, and how to exception you have to use in this programming. So here whenever you compiling this programming, it can be given a 3 type of error. And previous programming, how what is that? How many type of errors it can be getting that program?
2 sir.
Two errors it can be getting the programming, and here this programming can be getting the 3 errors. So here how to get that error line, how to get and how to identify that error line in the sense. And here console window or console box, it can be given a information of that programming. So which line it can be error based on that error. So here the runtime error is available, or compiler time errors can be available. Just you have to identify. So here you have to how can you approach in top to bottom or bottom to top?
Bottom to top.
Bottom to top, sir.
Yes, that is the way of fixing that error. So on that way I have to select it in this one is the first one. So this information is there. This is the exception. Java 6th line. Where is that 6th line? This one. So here, how can you identify? And here, the sum of the lines only have to involved in this programming. And this is not a 23 lines programming. You cannot use any application programming set. That the application programming set, in the number of thousands of lines, it can be involved in that particular application programming. So on the time, how much of time you have to scrolling for that identification of that line? That is not a possible. Yes or no? Of course, that is a possible, but so it a lot of time it can be certain identification purpose. It can be taken lot of time. Yes or no?
sir.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
So that's the thing. On the time, so on that package application programming purpose, so that is not a proper way. So on the time, just you have to click on this Java error exception. Just you have to click on this one. So then automatically that Java error, and where is that 6th line? Then automatically it can be passed on that line. Clear? That is a simple way,
Sir.
easy way, easy identification. So, and second one, here just you have to click on that second, then automatically it can be selected and second error. Clear?
Hmm.
Yes.
sir.
Sir.
And here also, what type of errors based on these two errors? These two errors, which based on this, it can be getting the programming. So on the time, just you have to go that the main functionality error. So this is the main functionality error based on this 0, based on this lang arithmetic exception. Then it can be getting this 2 lines error. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So that is the identification. Clear?
Sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, that is the identification. Actually, here entire this programming purpose, you have to identify that what is that different type of exceptions involved in this programming. So how to identify that exception? How to categorize that exception? So here that exception purpose you have to. So these are all exceptions. Just you have to call that. What is that actually? One moment. So what is that? Stack trace. What is that? On interview time, that persons they are asking, what is that? What is the meaning of the track trace? How can you explain that stack trace? Stack trace, that
లేదు.
trace. అందరూ టిఫిన్ చేశారమ్మా?
చేశాం సార్.
ఓకే,
ఎస్ సార్.
రైట్. అంటే కొంచెం ఎక్కువ టైం తీసుకున్నాం కదా, నేను క్లోజ్ చేస్తాను. మళ్ళీ తర్వాత రేపొద్దున మనం బ్రీఫ్ గా ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేసుకుందాం. సో ఇక్కడ మనం చూసినట్లయితే చూడండి, ఇక్కడ ట్రాక్ ట్రేస్ అనేటువంటి విషయంలో దేన్ని ట్రాక్ అంటాం? వాట్ ఈస్ ద ట్రాక్? టెల్ మీ.
ఎక్కడ ఏ లైన్ ఉందో ఈజీగా కనుక్కోవడానికి సార్.
ట్రాక్ ఇన్ ద సెన్స్ ఐడెంటిఫికేషన్. ఎస్ ఆర్ నో?
ఎస్ సార్.
Trace is the identification. So a stack trace in the sense memory. When you're compiling that memory, program, that entire the program, it can be stored in some particular memory. So that memory, how it can be, what is that? Tracing that error. So those are all things it should be available in that track trace. Okay. So here, for example, just you have to example that stack trace. Okay, this stack trace, it can be identified exception name. This is the one type of exception. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes. This is the which line number? Which line number? That error. So that number it can be identified. That is the stack trace. And third one, method information. So this is the one type of stack trace. So here, what you call this one, guys? What you call this?
Comment lines.
Comment line. Exactly. So this is the comment line. And what you call this one?
Multiple comment line.
Multiple comment line. So for what
Or
purpose?
document comment line.
Okay, of course. So for what purpose you have to use this in this way?
For reading purpose only, sir.
Yeah, reading purpose in the sense that is the definition. Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, that definition purpose you have to use in this way. So, okay, this comment line actually, when you're using in this way, when you are mentioning in this way, actually in our programming, so that that compiler, it cannot be identified as a error. Clear? It cannot identify as a error whenever comment in this way. So that's why I have to mention. Just you have to observe this one. Just you have to compile. So those are all things. It is not identified as a error. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes. In same things, it can be identified this console. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So only 3 lines only. It should be appear on that console screen. So so whenever you track tracing in the sense error identification. So by the error identification, by the exception name and which line it can be traced on that error and method information. So those are all things it can be available in this programming. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, exactly. So in that way, identification of that programming exception, for that exception or for that fixing that program